Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kawabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Kaihan, Bizarre Crimes That Shook Japan Volume 2 is now out. If you're interested in learning more about some of the most bizarre, strange, and even terrifying crimes that have taken place in Japan over the last few decades, then make sure to grab your copy now. You can find 25 new cases of missing persons, unsolved mysteries, and truly bizarre crimes that still confuse people today. That's Kaihan, Bizarre Crimes That Shook Japan Volume 2, out now. Welcome to the final episode for 2024. Thank you for choosing to spend yet another year with me in my little show, whether you listened to every single episode or even just a part of one. Thank you. This week, we're heading out to the countryside once again to see what wisdom and warnings those who reside out there have for us. First up, a village by the sea has a local custom every Obon that's slightly different for families who have lost relatives during that year. But when a young man returns for his grandmother's first Obon, he finds himself running into, well, something else. What's really going on? Find out in Village Near the Dead. This story might not be so scary, sorry, but this is something that happened to me just recently. My family home is in a fishing village in western Japan. There's a breakwater there that extends from the coast to the sea, and right at the end there's a gate, made of wood and big enough for an adult to pass through. Every year on August 7th, we greet the spirits of the dead at that gate. That breakwater is made of rocks, and during Obon, it serves as a path for the spirits, so no living people are allowed to go near it. From August 8th to August 14th, we visit the graves at the temple in front of the sea with our paper lanterns. In the light of those lanterns, we ask our ancestors to safely return home. Then, on August 15th, only the friends and family of those spirits who are taking part in their first Obon return to the gate by the breakwater. Then, with our paper lanterns, we set small wooden boats out into the sea to guide the spirits back to paradise. So, this year was my grandmother's first Obon, so I returned to the village on August 7th to take part in the event. From the beach, the chief priest faced the gate at the end of the breakwater and chanted some sutras while the villagers all closed their eyes and prayed. But I can't read sutras, and it was stupidly hot with the sun setting to the west, not to mention there were mosquitoes everywhere, so it was honestly pretty awful. Everyone was gathered on the breakwater that faced the southwest, so the setting sun shone through the gate. It was quite the sight, but also really bright. I squinted as I looked in that direction, and there I saw a person next to the gate. They appeared as a black silhouette because of the sun shining behind them. They appeared to be wearing a skirt, and they were about a head shorter than the gate. It appeared to be a girl. Hey, you can't stand there. You're not supposed to go near there. Even if you're just a kid, they'll still get angry at you. But I looked around and everyone was deep in prayer and not looking that way. They didn't seem to have noticed. I always had a strong sense of justice, so I told my mother next to me, "Hey Mum, look." She looked at me suspiciously. I had a smug look on my face. She frowned, and, still smug, I looked at the gate again. Huh? Nobody was there. The girl was gone. I looked around again, squinting my eyes as I looked, but she really was gone. Did that mean that what I saw was actually... Stop playing around. my mother muttered, fed up, and then went back to praying. But, unable to give up, I kept looking for the girl. And there she was, standing on the area near the breakwater and the beach. I was a little disappointed that it was apparently just a prank. That breakwater wasn't made of concrete, like they usually are these days. Looking at it head-on, it kind of looked like a hill shape between the water, and we were looking at it from there. So, the slanted area on either side was like a blind spot. I figured the child must have come back that way. I watched that kid the entire time everyone prayed, and then when they were done, I told my mother that she was the girl who was by the gate just before. Yes, yes, my mother said, brushing me off. The next day, I still had work, so I returned home, and then I went back to our family home after. Then, on August 14th, I decided to visit our family graves. I put a paper lantern on them, lit some incense, and watered the flowers. All of this only took about 5 minutes. I wondered if maybe I knew anyone there, but it was just my grandfather and grandmother. So, that temple had a simple rest area with a bench and some ashtrays, where you could see the graveyard on the left, and the beach where the ceremony is held on the right. So, I took a break and lit a cigarette, while taking turns looking at the lanterns and then the sea. And that girl I saw by the gate was there. You know how the graves of those who died in the war are really big, right? Well, she was hiding behind one of those. Is she playing hide and seek? I wondered. But there weren't any other kids around her age in the village. Even when I was a kid, there were maybe only 5 other kids around my age nearby. And now, 20 years later, I think there were even less kids. Plus, it was Obon. When I was a kid, we didn't really take part in this event. She was the only kid I saw back at the beach, and she was still the only kid I saw now. Maybe her family brought her out here, but she was bored and trying to kill some time. I thought maybe I should join her for a bit, but then the chief priest came over to catch up and started asking me questions like where I lived now, so I lost the chance. "Whose child is that?" I asked him as we were leaving. She was still hiding behind the large grave. Then the priest looked over and smiled. "Ah, that's so-and-so's child. They came back just recently." I didn't know who that person was, but he said they came back, so I guess they also lived in the city. If she was from there, then she no doubt didn't know about our customs and how you mustn't go near the gate. I decided not to tell the priest that she'd been near it. When I got back, I told my mother that the girl I saw by the gate was the daughter of so-and-so. "Ah, she must have come back with them," she said happily. So, the next day, it was time to see Grandma off to paradise, so I took the event a little more seriously. When I arrived at the beach, I looked around, but I couldn't see that girl or her parents anywhere. Anyway, we took part in the event. Then, we sent off the paper lanterns and we were all done without incident. Both the wind and waves were good this year, and my grandmother's lantern, as well as another from a different family, went all the way out to sea without sinking. And that was that. On the way home, my mother seemed quite happy. "What's up?" I asked. "Both your grandmother and that little girl safely reached paradise," she said. It turned out that the previous spring, that little girl had died in a traffic accident. She must have come back for Obon, I thought. But I also found it amazing that people in our village treated spirits like they were a perfectly normal occurrence. Next up, an island has one area in particular that people never go near. But why? What happens when a young man decides to go fishing there one day? Find out in Kunoma. This is a story from the island where my parents live, but this island has a pretty long history, and there's this place on it where nobody is allowed to enter. That place is called Kunoma, and there's not a single house in that area. You can find paved roads everywhere, but none of them connect to Kunoma, and there are no paved roads inside either. When I was in high school, I thought it was because that area turned into a sudden slope, so maybe it was just too difficult to build any. When I grew up, I became friends with Ei-san, the son and heir of the local temple. One day, we decided to go out and pick some turban shells together. The island was surrounded by baskets in the water, and all of the rocks were always overturned by outsiders bringing their gas cylinders with them. But Kunoma was the only peaceful area, so for a while we decided to go there instead. Ei-san was the son of the local priest, and he could see ghosts and such, so I figured we'd be fine. We just had to take a roughly 300-meter meandering path to get down there. When we arrived, we could see lots of large, good quality rocks from the shore, and there was no rubbish, so the water was beautiful as well. We picked lots of shells and then went home. The fishing cooperative had a rule that you could take shells home as long as they were larger than a certain size, so we were in the clear and not doing anything wrong either. One day, some time later, we had finished gathering shells and were enjoying an open-air fire when Ei-san told me a story. Long ago, this area used to be a gambling den, and the weirdly placed timber we could see around the place was the remains of a row house that used to exist here. Apparently, that row house had been around since the Edo period, and was controlled by the Murakami pirates. But they were a dirty bunch, and they often hung themselves in the forest at the bottom of the slope. Apparently, lots of yokai appeared around that same time, and there was a book in the temple storehouse that detailed sightings of them. Apparently, he saw something similar on our way home the day before, so he suggested that perhaps we should stop visiting Kunoma for a while. Sure, let's do that, I said. And so that was the last day we visited Kunoma. On the way back up the slope, Ei-san's scooter suddenly stopped. He left it and started running as fast as he could. It was against the law, but it seemed something dangerous was nearby, so he got on my bike and I rode home with him on the back. When we got back to his house, he told me that he saw something looking at us, like a large black eyeball. A black shadow was also pulling his scooter. I didn't see any of it, but I was still scared as I finished riding home. Later, I realized that the character for Ku in Kunoma used to be the character for pain, but in recent times it was changed to the character for 9 instead. When I saw that, I got chills. The young boy in this next story goes to spend the summer with his grandparents, but it seems he's not the only visitor. What's hanging around their house with them? Find out in The Hanging Scroll of Shoki-sama. This happened when I was in the lower grades of elementary school. Around Obon, my parents had to do something, so I went to stay with my grandfather for a while. He lived in the middle of nowhere with Grandma. Their house was surrounded by mountains, and it was so remote that there was nowhere for me to play. At first, I was worried about being away from my parents for a while, but gradually I got used to it, and before long I found myself enjoying life in the countryside. But there were also some scary things about living out there. At night, it was dark. Real dark. That was scary. When the sun went down, I didn't want to be alone at all, so I always stuck close to my grandparents. They seemed to realize this, so they also made sure I was never alone. I spent bath time with Grandpa, and when it was time to sleep, we all shared a futon with me in the middle. One day, I was sleeping in the middle like always, but the sound of a blanket being thrown woke me up. I turned to look, and it seemed Grandpa had gotten up and left the room. Maybe he needs the toilet, I thought, as I heard his footsteps heading in that direction. A dim fluorescent light was on, and as I was about to go back to sleep, I saw the hanging scroll of Shoki-sama in the alcove. His large, angry eyes moved and looked right at me. The intensity of his glare made me freeze, but then a thick, hairy arm reached out from the scroll towards my head. Then, with the sheath of the katana he was holding, he hit me. I screamed, unable to take it any longer, and jumped out of bed. "What? What is it?" My grandfather came running back into the room. Grandma also woke up in a panic and then turned the lights on. I explained to them what had just happened, that Shoki-sama in the alcove had just hit me on the head. "Ah, okay. Hold on a minute." My grandfather went over to the hanging scroll and took it off the wall. I was so scared that I asked Grandma to hold me while Grandpa put the scroll away. I didn't take my eyes off the alcove the entire time. Once he was done, I decided to sleep between them on the bed again. I was scared, but also tired. I quickly fell asleep. The next day, Grandpa was really angry. "I can't let him hit my boy on the head. I'll teach him a lesson," he said. And then he took me out into the garden. Grandma was already there, and she had lit a small fire. "Here, you sit here," my grandfather said to me, pointing to a spot on the veranda, and then he went back inside. He returned a few moments later holding a fry pan and a wound-up scroll. "Just you watch. I'm gonna teach him a lesson," he said. He went into the garden, put the fry pan above the fire, and then he held the hanging scroll in the smoke rising from it. A small sound came out of the scroll. It sounded like coughing. Smoke continued to rise, and as it got darker and more violent, the coughing seemed to as well. Suddenly, the scroll started to shake up and down, like it was trembling, and then something long, grey, and hairy crawled out of it. It landed in the fry pan with a plop, and then it jumped right back out and sped away. "Did you see that just now?" my grandfather asked, turning to look at me sitting on the veranda. I nodded several times. "It was a weasel playing a prank, but it's okay now. He won't come back here again." Then he stood up and opened the scroll. The picture was of a bright red sun with 2 cranes. "That damned weasel, transforming into Shulky-sama. That's what you get," Grandpa said, and Grandma laughed. But as for me, all I could do was look around in amazement at the strange scene I had just witnessed. When a child goes missing, the entire village sets out to find them. But what they find while on the search makes the whole situation even more confusing. Find out why in Washed Away. Before I moved to my current house, I used to live in a village way out in the countryside. The village was surrounded by mountains and several rivers, so we pretty much never saw outsiders. One day, I ran into my father getting ready to leave as I got home from school. He had rubber boots and waterproof pants on, which clearly wasn't his usual attire, as well as an extremely serious look on his face. "What's going on?" I asked, curious as to why he was going out wearing rubber boots. "Hiro-chan was playing in the river and went missing," he said, his expression still tense. Hiro-chan was one of the neighbor's kids, only 3 years old. Apparently, he was playing with his mother at the river near our house. She heard the phone ringing at home, so she told him to get out of the water and wait for her, as she ran to answer it. But when she came back, Hiro-chan was gone. This river was pretty gentle on the edges, but the current in the middle was rather strong. It was possible that Hiro-chan got washed downstream, so the villagers organized a search party to find him. I knew him well, so I told my father that I'd join him. The river was only a 2-minute walk from our house, so I also put on some rubber boots and then made my way over. When I got there were already several adults in the water looking around. Hiro-chan's mother was sitting on the gravel nearby, crying. I decided to go further downstream and search with my father. The outsides of the river really were quite weak, but once I got near the middle of the water, the current was too strong even for me, a 17-year-old, to withstand. We might already be too late, I couldn't help but think. I continued searching the water for a while, but as the sky was turning a pale ash color and the sun began to set, a man nearby called out, "Hey, did you see something in the water just now?" I looked closer, and there definitely was something in the river. It looked black and it was coming towards us from upstream. "What's that?" I thought. As I approached it and realized what it was, a chill ran down my spine. It was a Buddhist altar. As it got closer to us and I could see it better, it creeped me out. It was rather small and falling apart. And the timing being what it was, all of us froze on the spot. And then, after a few seconds of silence, suddenly the village headman spoke. "Maybe Hiro-chan was spirited away." Hearing that, I was even more creeped out. They found Hiro-chan's body 3 days later, but he was almost unrecognizable and his clothes were like rags. I was still curious about that altar, however, so I went upstream to check things out, and there wasn't even a single house in that direction, and the area was mostly cliffs that were far too steep for anyone to climb. We didn't hear anything about anyone going up there that day, so to this day we still have no idea what happened. Some scouts at a camp are enjoying their time swimming in the nearby river, until they spot something that shouldn't be there. Something that, it seems, wants to take one of them with it. Find out why in Drowning. This happened when I was in the 4th grade or so. I was a member of the local youth volunteer organisation from the 2nd to the 6th grade. We were led by a local university student, and during the summer holidays and other days off throughout the year, various elementary school students from the city would get together to go camping or do volunteer work. During the summer holidays of this particular year, we went camping at an abandoned school deep in the mountains. I don't remember the details exactly, but near that school you could find the upper reaches of a river, and we all went swimming there. However, being upstream, the area was full of large rocks and stones. The current was also pretty strong, but it wasn't like we couldn't swim there at all. We looked for a spacious area where we could freely swim and dive. We found an area right underneath a bridge that was just deep enough to dive into, so we happily started swimming there. I was at the camp with A-chan, who lived near me. He was a bit of a dimwit, so at the time other kids sometimes bullied him. And as I was diving in the river, I suddenly saw him drowning next to me. "Ah, A-chan! He's a bit slow, so he's drowning," I thought. I tried to break the water's surface so I could ask some friends on the riverbank for help. But as I did, suddenly A-chan grabbed my leg and pulled me back down. We were going to drown together. I struggled as hard as I could, but A-chan pulled my legs down, and I felt long hair tangle around them. I honestly couldn't breathe, and I thought I was about to die. In great pain, I opened my eyes and looked down. I saw a pale woman, her hair wavering in the water like seaweed, pulling my ankle with her pale hands. "That's not A-chan!" I was suddenly overcome with fear, and I kicked at the woman as hard as I could, over and over. I managed to make my way back to the riverbank, and there I saw A-chan looking at me, a worried expression on his face. "Hey, weren't you drowning just now?" I asked. "You were the only one drowning," he replied. Even now, I still get chills down my spine when I think about what might have happened if that woman actually succeeded in dragging me down with her. A certain family seems to be visited by a mysterious figure whenever something bad is about to happen to them. But what is it? And can they even do anything to heed the warning? Find out in Kami of Misfortune. It's said that long, long ago, a family attendant chased away an oni, and ever since then, whenever something bad happened to our family, a Kami of Misfortune would appear. This might be an oni, a snake, or something entirely unknown. That's the story that's passed down in our family. And I think I personally experienced it once too. Last autumn, my grandfather passed away. The day before he died, my cousin and I visited him at home to care for him. That night, the two of us went outside for a cigarette, and there I saw a figure standing on the other side of the garden hedge. My grandfather's house sat on a protrusion on a plateau, so I didn't think anyone would climb over the hedge. But I turned the outside lights on and saw some old guy I'd never seen before, looking right at me. He looked like a regular old guy wearing pajamas. "Sir, what are you doing?" I asked. "He's going to die soon," he said. Oh, come on, don't say such creepy things, I thought. But my cousin suddenly got angry at him. What are you talking about? He's going to die soon, the old man said again. Stop it. He's going to die soon. You're being ridiculous. He's going to die soon. I turned around, thinking that I should let someone in the house know that a weird old guy had shown up. But then my cousin screamed. Ah! He's gone! I turned around again, and the man was nowhere to be seen. Did he fall? I wondered, approaching the hedge, but there was just an empty road below. We brushed it off as some random weirdo, and neither my cousin nor I mentioned the old guy to anyone after that. But the next morning, our grandfather suddenly died. He was recuperating at home because we knew he didn't have much longer left, but we didn't think it would be quite so soon. I don't think that old guy was a prophet, but I did wonder if maybe he was that so-called cummy of misfortune. Some kids on their way to catch crabs spot something floating in the water that is most definitely not a crab. But what is it? And what does it really want? And are they even seeing the same thing? Find out in Woman in the River. This story was a source of trauma for me. Last summer, I returned to the countryside with my father to see his family. They lived on an island that was mainly made up of fishermen and people who made their living growing seaweed. My father's family home is close to the mountains, so my cousins and I often went mountain climbing, swimming in the ocean, and we played in the rivers near the mountain too. There was a river mouth or something where the river and ocean met, and we often went there to catch crabs too. Last Obon, we were told not to go swimming because of large sharks, an old tradition passed down in the area. So we weren't allowed to go to the beach. With nothing else to do, my cousins and I decided to catch some crabs. On the way, we crossed a river, but halfway across the bridge, one of my cousins looked down and stopped me. "Hey, there's a person down there," he said. Beneath the bridge was a spot you could catch crabs, so I wondered if someone beat us to it. I looked down, but nobody was there. "Huh? I don't see anyone," I said. "No, in the water. Look, it's a woman." I looked in the water, and just like he said, a woman was floating on her side, her long hair flowing in the river. However, she appeared to be floating upstream. Huh? Why? How is she floating upstream? I thought. But then the woman suddenly turned and looked right at me. She saw me. The moment the thought crossed my mind, I let out a small scream and fell backwards. Terrified, I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, my cousin was staring at the river. He didn't seem scared at all, and he tugged at my trousers. "Hey, that woman's beautiful. Is she a mermaid? Or maybe a kami-sama from the river?" he said casually. But to me, I could only see her as something terrifying and sinister. I can't remember her clothes at all, just her long wavy hair and slender body, and the terrifying look on her face as she glared hatefully at me. Yet, to my cousin, she seemed divine. I don't know whether we saw the same thing, something different, or we just perceived it differently. But on that note, that cousin died in the ocean 2 years later. I don't know whether it was related to that woman or not, but ever since then, I've never once gone swimming again. A grandmother with a strong sixth sense shares a story from her youth, but did she actually experience something supernatural, or was it something else entirely? Find out in Ako-san. My grandmother has done all sorts of things over the years, and is very much a person who follows her own path. Apparently, she could see ghosts when she was a child, and when I was younger, she often told me lots of ghost stories. For example, one time she passed an old lady on the road who was supposed to be bedridden. Huh? She thought, but she later heard that the old woman had died at that precise moment. She also told me about an elementary school toilet that was rumoured to be haunted. Of course, when she went there, it really was. And in the end, the toilets were made off limits. But the most memorable story she told me was one about her friend. It was a pretty typical story though. So, my grandmother, I'll call her Keiko, was the daughter of a large farming family. Of course, they were wealthy, and during the war, they never lacked food to eat. While everyone was going through one of the most harsh periods in Japanese history, her lifestyle was almost the exact opposite. As such, she learnt things like flower arrangement, dancing, singing, and other expensive things. And she had a friend, Ako-san, who had been learning these things with her since they were both children. Ako-san was good at singing. Keiko was good at dancing. So the two of them often performed for the adults in their village. From the way she told her story, I guess it was around the time they were at a girls' school, or shortly thereafter, that Ako-san was admitted to the hospital. Around that same time, several people from Keiko's family who had died in the war had their bodies returned, so their house was apparently filled with the noise of ghosts. Her direct words. That night, she heard footsteps in the empty wooden hall, but Keiko was just like, again. But those footsteps got louder and louder, and then before long, they had entered her room. Creak, creak. She heard someone walking around the bed with the mosquito net that she was sleeping in, but she couldn't see who. But then, a voice suddenly called out to her. Keiko-chan? Keiko-chan? She knew that voice. Ako-chan? She asked, surprised. Yeah. Keiko-chan, I'm going to sing, so you should dance, the voice replied. Huh? Keiko thought, but then she heard Ako-san singing. Keiko was still sleepy, so she just thought, Ako-chan must have passed away too. My grandmother didn't mention anything about dancing, so I guess she just ignored her and went back to sleep. She was very much a matter-of-fact person like that. The next day, they got a phone call from the hospital. Keiko answered, but the person on the other end was Ako-san herself. Keiko-chan! Long time no see. I had a dream last night that I went to your house to sing while you danced. Oh, it was so fun, and it got me thinking about the past, so I decided to call you. But while she was talking, apparently Keiko was just thinking, so she's still alive then. What a matter-of-fact woman my grandmother was. And they all lived happily ever after. Finally this week, a boy on a trip with his family encounters something weird in their hotel room when he's all alone. It seems he may not be as alone as he thinks. Find out why in CRT. This happened on a family trip to Tottori Prefecture. When I was in elementary school, our family always went to stay at my father's parents' house in Tottori during the summer holidays. We would stay there for 4 or 5 days, then spend 1 or 2 days in a hot spring before going home. This is about what happened at the Hot Spring Hotel. At the time, I was approaching my second growth period, so I didn't want to be with my family and went to the hot spring alone. I then waited back at the hotel room watching TV while my family went. I think it was around 10 o'clock. I was bored of watching TV, so I decided to play a handheld game for a while. I crawled over to the TV and turned it off. But then, something reflected in the TV screen caught my attention. The entire room was there, distorted a little, like a fish lens from the curve of the screen. I was right in the middle, but behind me, in one of the corners of the room, I could see someone else. It was a woman in a yukata. She was facing the wall, so I couldn't see her face. For a moment, I remained frozen on all fours as I looked at her in the TV screen. A few seconds or maybe even minutes passed. That woman in the yukata behind me didn't move. I wondered if maybe my fingers moved of their own accord. The TV turned on again. It seemed the paralysis gripping me broke, and I snapped my neck around to look at that corner. Nobody was there. There wasn't a woman nor anybody else in the corner of the room. I could hear the TV playing, and I wasn't sure if what I saw had been real or not. Again, I turned the TV off. I don't know why. Maybe I felt relieved but still curious. Maybe I wanted proof that what had just happened was a dream. But that same woman in a yukata was reflected in the TV screen again. I couldn't believe it. I just stared at her. Then her shoulder moved, as though she was aware that I was looking at her. She noticed me, I thought. I was almost in tears. The woman started to turn around. I didn't want to see her face. The moment I saw her profile, I closed my eyes. My family woke me up once they got back from the hot spring. Apparently, I was sleeping in front of the TV. But even now, I still don't know whether what I saw was actually just a dream or not. A massive thank you and shout out to this week's Kami tier members, Just Sawn and Emerald. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Kaihan, Bizarre Crimes That Shook Japan Volume 2, out on Amazon right now. And check out our merchandise store at kowabana.store. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.